Welcome to part 4 in my series on doing a rolling restoration on this 1987 Mercedes 300E. Now, it's been a while since I did part 3, and the reason was because if you recall in the last part, I said I'm going to go out and try to find another 300E with a good engine and a good transmission. Well, I've been looking, and I've been looking for almost a month, and I'm thinking, you know, it may take a while, and if that's the case, then this is not a rolling restoration. We need to keep this thing rolling. But the problem today is the only way it's going to roll is if I push it. It won't move under its own power anymore. Let me explain why. Look what I have here on the bench. Yes, that's right. This is a transmission from Hans, and that's the name of the 300E. I just decided, look, if I can't get the transmission to move the car, then it's not a rolling restoration. So I said, I'm just going to pull this out and see if I can fix it. Now, when you look at these automatic transmissions, I know a lot of you out there are going to think, wow, I don't want to work on one of those. This right here lies somewhere between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. I want to make a few comments before we start tearing into this transmission. Number one, what we're after here is the reason this transmission would not upshift. But what's interesting, the previous owner told me this, if he let the car run for about 10 minutes and everything would get hot, it would actually shift. It'd shift in the second, third, and fourth. Not smoothly, but at least it would shift. Every time it's cold, wouldn't shift at all. Wouldn't even go out of first gear. Reverse is fine. What could be wrong? Is there any quick fix to this thing? What are the things that would keep the transmission from shifting? One of the first things that came to mind was the kickdown switch. If the kickdown switch is stuck, then the transmission is only going to stay in first gear. So we got into the car, we removed the kickdown solenoid and replaced it from another transmission, put it back in, went out and drove it, and look what happened. We're back in the 124. I just changed the kickdown solenoid. I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the problem why this transmission wasn't upshifting. So we'll take it out for a quick test drive. I'm not real confident this is going to solve the problem, but let's see. Will it shift? No. You can see why I don't want to drive this car until I get this transmission fixed. So it's back to the shop and back onto the lift. So you can see that didn't fix the problem. The next thing we thought about was the valve body. Okay, the valve body we can change. We've got a good valve body, and maybe the valve passages are plugged up in the valve body, not allowing the transmission to shift. So we went underneath the car, we took the valve body off. I'm sure some of you have not seen this before. Really quite interesting. We joke and call these the corn maze here. No, these are the valve bodies. We pulled the valve body out of the 300E. Now remember, this is a 1987 300E. Valve body, intermediate plate. This is a valve body out of a 1983 300D transmission. And this intermediate plate. And guess what? Both of these have the same part number. We are going to change just the valve body. Look at this intermediate plate that came out of the 300E. I don't think I've ever seen one so deteriorated. Look at the junk that's coming off this gasket. Look at this. Now, can you imagine this getting into some of these passages in the valve body? This is probably a lot of clutch pack material, which means, you know, the transmission's not going to last forever. So because these parts are identical, we're going to clean this one up from the 300D transmission, and we're going to install this back in the 300E. That replacement valve body is in. New fluid, new filter. And we're kind of optimistically unoptimistic, I guess you call it. It's so many problems with trying to get this transmission to shift. So we'll cross our fingers here. Okay, please shift. Shoot. Boy, talk about being discouraged. Absolute no change. Still would not go out of first gear. So we're back here now, like you got to see, and pull the transmission out. If we can't find the problem, we're not going to use this transmission. I'm not going to put a transmission back in the car if I can't find a known problem. There's a couple more things that we considered could be the problem. One of them was the governor in the transmission. If the governor were stuck or plugged up, then the transmission wouldn't shift. Removing the governor is a fairly easy two-step process. First, we have to remove this cover, and you can see right in here there's a ring. So we're going to just get a screwdriver in there. We're going to pop this ring out, just like that. And there's a nice slot where we can fit our flat blade screwdriver in and wiggle this out, wiggle the cover out. Okay, that exposes this end of the governor. The next step is to release the lock that keeps the governor in place, and that's this little set screw here. We have to get a 10mm socket, loosen up the locking nut. And we'll loosen that locking nut up. And then I'm going to get my screwdriver back, and we're going to reach over to this side and we're going to pull on it. And we're going to turn this. Okay, there it is. And look at that. There's the governor. Do we have a problem here? First thing we're going to do is we're going to check the springs. They're working. The flyweights are coming out smoothly. I don't see any damage, nothing stuck there. We're going to look at the piston inside movement. Look at as I run these flyweights out right there. See the movement right there in the channels? I'm looking at the teeth, the gear. I'm looking at the bushings, no wear. So I would say after looking at this, I do not believe that the problem is the governor. And then finally, and I believe this next one may surprise some of you, is we may have a faulty B2 piston. Believe it or not, this B2 piston can fail to the point where it won't even shift into forward gears. It'll kind of shift into reverse. So we're going to pull the B2 piston out and we're going to look at it. If some of you have heard there's been upgrades over the years, and we're going to try to see if there's any indication inside here this is a problem why this transmission wouldn't shift. All right, so we're going to push in on this. It's just lightly spring-loaded. There's a trick to getting this out with less frustration, and it's you want to find this notch right here. This is going to be the notch that you're going to be prying on the clip, but you also want to rotate this cover around until this point is adjacent to the notch, or just right about in there, because you're not going to be able to get the clip out. If it's up here, the clip's going to bind in there, so just rotate this down to right about here. Okay, now we can get the clip, get it behind it. Just roll the screwdriver. Okay, then you can put your screwdriver in here and wiggle this to get it out. All right, there's our cover. Now, if the B2 piston comes out in pieces, they will break. If it comes out in pieces, we know that's the problem. We're going to pull this out, and notice there's a pin in here, and we're going to keep the orientation of the pin. And now we're going to inspect this very closely, and we'll even talk about the changes that have been made and what problems can occur in here that could keep the transmission from shifting. I want to take a close look at this nylon ring. I'm going to clean it off. Okay, we're looking for scoring marks. There it is. What happens is these will rock a little bit, and if this has got scoring on it, it can bind up. Also, you have this going into a sleeve down in there behind the seal. Here's the seal that seals it. So you could have a problem with the seal, but one of the big problems is because this original sleeve is made out of aluminum, this is steel. Over time, this will start to scratch and this will bind. If this binds up and can't move, and then the transmission won't shift. So let's see how smoothly this one operates in the bore. So I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to push in. Look at that right there. See, it's binding right in there. It's almost like a ridge. And of course, if it gets twisted a little bit, you can't even move it at all. Watch this. I'm going to twist it a little bit and it won't move. So I think we're on to something here. I think we've got some binding going on right in there. Now this makes sense. Follow me here as I explain this. Guess what happens when you run the transmission for 10 minutes, it gets hot. This swells up and then the piston's going to move. So the symptoms indicate that, yes, this could be the problem. Now I'm going to take you over to another transmission right now, and I'm going to show you how easily that B2 piston moves in and out. I realize this is the old style B2 piston, but I just wanted to show this in relationship to the other transmission from Hans, is how this should operate and not bind. If I push this in, watch. See? It goes in and out smoothly like that. So we definitely have a problem with that transmission out of the 300E. What is the solution Mercedes came up with? I think the primary one is this aluminum sleeve has now been replaced with a nylon sleeve. That's your chief upgrade on the B2 piston. So you pull the aluminum sleeve out that this piece rides in, and the nylon is much softer. It'll keep it from binding when it moves in and out. The other thing is they've changed this seal a little bit. Of course, they went from a single seal that's just like a little piston ring to a wider seal. But the edges on this are sharp. And if you look, you push this in, and if you tip it a little bit, like right there, just tip it a little bit, try to push it. It binds up. So there's a modification that has been made on the B2 piston itself, and you can now buy that new. So now I'm going to remove the sleeve and the seal. They come out together. You've got to get on the back side of the sleeve. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick. And there are a number of different ways you can get this out. If you watch some videos on YouTube, there's different clever little ways guys have come up with to get it out, but it's stuck in there. You don't expect you're just going to be able to pry it out. So I thought, hey, let's just grab my simple seal removal tool. You go in there and, get the edge in there, and then you just hold it with this hand and hammer on it. So I go in there and I hook onto that, and I start hammering. And I hammer, and long story short, I said, I'm going to give up on that idea. So I looked at this in here, and I said, I think a slide hammer will work. If we get the right tool, this is a seal removal tool. You can see as you screw this in, it spreads those arms out. And if I can get a slide hammer on here, I can, bang, 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 out it'll come. Well, it didn't turn out to be that easy. The original slide hammer was this little teeny weight, and it just wouldn't work. And I had to make another modification. I had to put this nut in here like this so I could actually get these to spread out enough. See that? So I back that down right there, and I'm going to stick this in here like this, and then I'm going to spread it out. I keep turning this and I keep spreading those arms out. I make sure I'm on the correct lip. I had to weld this fitting onto this slide hammer, and I had to bring out the big guns. So, there's nothing like having the right slide hammer. So let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to turn this in a little bit more. I'm going to hold it steady. Oh, look at that. That's how it's supposed to come out. Now look, there's something real important. I had to make sure that the teeth on these two arms weren't going out too far, or it would score the bore in here. So now we have removed the aluminum sleeve and the seal. You might thought I'd take a close look at this sleeve. Whoa, look at that. That right there. I didn't do that. That was like that when removed. Remember the teeth of the puller on the back side, so we didn't damage that front side. Let's see how stiff this runs in that sleeve. Oh, you're kidding me. Look. See how it wants to bind up? Okay. I think we found the problem here. You know, that little nick there? Wow. Who knows? Maybe this was replaced at one point and not installed properly. But because of what we saw when we took the valve body off inside the transmission, debris in the pan, we're going to go ahead and completely disassemble this 300E transmission.